Great to see you today, Congressman. And I use the word pleading with people because we thought they were all gone. There are always those holdouts, and that makes your job more difficult. How are things going?
Well, first of all, thank you for the invitation to be with you today, Harris. I see that my friend Matt Slapp there is the thorn amongst all the roses. But we are preparing for the worst here, obviously, and we've not seen a storm like this probably since Hurricane Hazel in 1954. My father told me the other day that he has very vivid memories of that storm. He was about 9 years old. And the fact of the matter is, I'm afraid that this storm is going to linger right around Wilmington. Looks like it's going to head a little further southwest than what we originally anticipated. But the flooding has the potential to be absolutely just devastating. Keep in mind, in 2016, we had Hurricane Matthew come through. And we still have a lot of folks throughout my congressional district and all throughout along the South Carolina line there in particular, and other districts as well, that are still suffering from the flooding of Matthew.
You know, I'm very familiar with that state. We lived at Fort Bragg. We were stationed there. My first television market was in Washington, New Bern, which you know is another one of those tender areas along the coastline. The infrastructure all those years ago was suspect. And I know you've spent a lot of money in your state and you've tried to pull along, but each year, you mentioned 2016 with Hurricane Matthew, that infrastructure takes a punishing beating. 40 inches of rain, they're measuring in feet in some areas. What does that do to the structures in your state?
Well, anytime you have a massive flooding, it shows you all the weak spots of your infrastructure. Certainly we saw that during the course of Hurricane Matthew and the aftermath of the flooding there. The little town of Fairbluff in Columbus County was completely, totally wiped out. I expect the flooding to be just as significant and severe there, if not more so this time around. And one thing I think is really important, folks need to heed the warnings to leave the area if at all possible. They still have time. I have friends that have chosen to stay. I have friends that have chosen to leave, and I've told them all, and I'm going to tell them all publicly now, as I have in other settings. I really think folks should move out and get to a much safer place, because if this storm lasts for 48, 72 hours, however long, right there over Wilmington, the flooding is going to be absolutely massive. The storm surge is going to be really unbelievable. And again, we've not seen a storm like this in our part of the country since Hurricane Hazel in 1954. And that storm was legendary in terms of the damage inflicted. And keep in mind, we didn't have near the population center then in southeastern North Carolina that we do now, particularly there on the coast.
That's a really good point. I have to say, Congressman, when you call out your friends publicly, you get their attention, I would imagine, when your friend is Congressman Rouzer. You know, moving forward to this, it could be days and weeks before you get infrastructure and utilities back up and running, buildings open that can help out. You know, there's been some criticism about how much federal help you're getting. Can you just tell me right now if you have everything you need and just maybe clap back at that if you'd like?
Well, first of all, this is a combined effort at the local, state, and federal level. We've had conference calls every single day with FEMA, the Trump administration. Everybody is hands on deck. I also want to thank all my colleagues that have reached out to me who have endured these disasters in recent years. So many have reached out. I've not had a chance to get back to them all, but I appreciate their sincere thoughts and prayers and their offer to help, including sending folks to the district, you know, once this hurricane moves on, because we're going to have a tremendous amount of damage. You know, we've got a great folks in the district and throughout the state in terms of the infrastructure side of things with Duke Energy. All of our electric cooperatives, they're all working hand in hand. In fact, yesterday, I was at the Wilmington Emergency Management Center there. The director told his crowd, he said, look, we've been preparing for this type of storm for 5 years, and now let's go and execute. It's here among us. We have great men and women on the ground who are doing everything possible to protect the citizenry, but there's a lot that they can do themselves to protect themselves, and number one is move out of the way of the storm if at all possible. If you have another place you can go, please go.
Yeah, our hearts go out to all those people too who've evacuated. We don't always talk about the financial burden that can put if you're in a hotel for longer than you thought you'd ever be or whatever. It's a time for Americans to pull together and help those families too if this lingers on as it's predicted to do. So we heed the call as Americans that you've called upon us. Congressman Rouzer.
Yeah, not only that, Harris, I think it's really important for folks to understand power may be out for 2 or 3 weeks.
Exactly.
Particularly if the flooding. Particularly if the flooding is as severe as it could be, as I expect it to be, if that storm lingers over the coastline, all that water is going to be pushing in.
A lot of water.
It's got nowhere to go. We've had a fairly wet summer in many parts of the district in this part of the state. The flooding could be really, really significant and severe. So I really encourage folks to heed the call of the local officials. If you have a better place you can move to, please go. There are a number of shelters that have opened up, and it's all hands on deck. There's no question about that.
And again, we heed the call across America too, because there are things that we can do to help out when they open up those donation lines and so on and so forth if that's necessary. Congressman Rouzer from the great state of North Carolina getting ready. Thank you.
Absolutely. Great to be with you. Thank you.